Marriage had never prepared me for rage like this. A white-hot fury burned through my chest, hotter than anything I'd felt in combat. What these so-called officers didn't know was simple: some husbands are more dangerous than others. I stepped outside, and suddenly their cocky swagger melted into something very different. Here's how this suburban nightmare began, on what should have been just another ordinary Tuesday in our picture-perfect Arizona neighborhood. You know the type: palm trees trimmed to military precision, every lawn sculpted like an art exhibit, and the homeowners association breathing down your neck with notices as punctual as clockwork. My wife, Claire, was kneeling by our rose bed in a plain white gardening shirt already streaked with dirt when she spotted it, a bright yellow violation slip pinned to her fence like some modern-day scarlet letter. The desert sun blazed, even at 9 a.m., casting sharp shadows across the driveway as Claire read the ridiculous words out loud. Fence height exceeds regulation by 2 inches. Unauthorized flag display. Compliance required within 72 hours. From the kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, I thought about how I'd survived 3 tours overseas just to come home and battle HOA tyrants with rulers and tape measures. At least in war the enemy had the decency to tell you up front they wanted you dead. These people hid behind rule books and fake authority. Claire, sharp as ever, lifted her phone and started recording. 15 years with a soldier had taught her, document everything before the real fight begins. That's when the circus arrived. 2 men strutted across our lawn in tactical gear that looked like it came from a clearance bin at a costume shop. The taller one, Derek, had a nightclub bouncer's build, though his vest zipper looked like it was seconds away from exploding. His partner, Kyle, flexed hard for effect, wearing a crooked badge that would make any real officer burst out laughing. "Ma'am, stop recording enforcement action immediately," Derek barked in a wannabe drill sergeant voice better suited for scaring off frat boys. Kyle puffed out his chest, swaggering like they were storming a compound instead of confronting a schoolteacher about fence regulations. Their patches read compliance unit, not police. That told me everything. Claire kept filming, calm and steady, because she knew the value of evidence. These clowns were handing us a comedy special on a silver platter. "Sir, comply with HOA rules or face escalation," Derek snapped, stepping far too close to her. That's when instinct took over. Training kicked in: assess threat, identify exits, protect your priority asset, the woman I loved more than life itself. And then it happened. Kyle, the hot-headed one, suddenly lashed out and struck Claire hard across the face. The sound cracked through our quiet street like a gunshot. Her phone flew into the grass, screen shattered but still recording. Claire staggered back, hand pressed to her cheek, the red mark already spreading. She didn't cry, she's tougher than steel, but her wide eyes said everything. Who expects to be assaulted by fake cops on a Tuesday morning over a fence? That's the moment something raw and dangerous snapped on inside my brain, the same survival switch that had carried me through 3 combat tours and made enemy fighters think twice before pulling a trigger. The screen door slammed behind me like a gunshot as I stepped outside, and I swear the air itself cooled 10 degrees with my presence. I wasn't armored up, just a faded Marine Corps t-shirt and worn jeans. Nothing special. But my posture, my stance, my entire energy, shifted into something these suburban warriors had never once encountered in their knockoff security careers. 38 years alive. 3 deployments. Countless hours of combat training. And now here I was, standing in my own yard, staring down a pair of dollar store enforcers who had just assaulted my wife. "I'm Special Forces," I said, calm and steady, like I was giving the weather report. "You just hit my wife. Very bad decision." My hands hung loose at my sides, body weight balanced, every muscle coiled like a compressed spring, ready to strike. These idiots in costume had no idea what they had awakened. But they were about to learn the difference between real combat experience and playing soldier in their backyard fantasies. "Stand down. Hands where I can see them. Last warning." The command voice came out automatically, the same voice that once froze insurgents in their tracks overseas, the tone that made combatants rethink every choice they had ever made. But Derek didn't listen. He thought his cheap vest made him unstoppable. He lunged forward, clumsy and wild, like some amateur MMA hopeful. I pivoted left, smooth and controlled. His own reckless momentum carried him forward. He tripped hard on the steps, crashing down in a heap, blood already dripping as he cried out for help. Kyle wasn't any smarter. He kept throwing sloppy haymakers, telegraphed so wide I could see them coming from the next neighborhood. I ducked under his clumsy right hook, stepped aside like a matador watching a blind bull charge past, and let gravity finish the listen. Kyle went down hard, crashing into the sprinkler system. When he tried to speak, his jaw wouldn't cooperate. Drool poured down his chin as he gurgled, I can't close my mouth," looking more like a confused toddler than a threat. Meanwhile, Derek was rolling around on our lawn like he'd been hit by sniper fire. Blood streamed from his nose as he whined, "You broke it. You broke my nose." His voice cracked like a teenager hitting puberty, which would have been funny enough, if his tactical vest hadn't finally given up the fight. The zipper burst wide open, exposing the t-shirt underneath. Bold letters read, "World's Greatest Dad." The irony nearly knocked me over. Here was a man who had just assaulted my wife, crying like a child while advertising his questionable parenting skills. Kyle wasn't faring much better. With his jaw hanging crooked, his attempts at speech came out garbled, "Irish. Instead of 'You're under arrest." Both of these so-called tough guys were now crying, bleeding, and begging for medical help, while rainbow-colored arcs from the sprinklers painted the yard like some surreal suburban commentary on violence and stupidity. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, because unlike these clowns, I knew how responsible adults behaved. "This is Chuck Morgan, 1523 Palmetto Drive," I said evenly. "I need law enforcement and EMS for 2 injured individuals who just assaulted my wife during an illegal home invasion." While I coordinated with dispatch, something caught my eye in the grass, Derek's phone. It had flown from his pocket during his fall, and the screen still glowed with a text notification. "Boss lady, use force if needed. Timestamp, 2 minutes before they arrived." That meant this wasn't random. Someone ordered this assault like a mission briefing. Claire, bless her teacher instincts, kept filming through her swollen cheek. She captured the phone, the text, and the whole scene, evidence that would soon make Marissa Grant's life very complicated. By now, the neighborhood had woken up. Mildred from across the street peeked out through lace curtains with her phone aimed at us. Frank, my next-door neighbor, stepped out of his garage still clutching a socket wrench. Mrs. Rodriguez froze mid-watering, staring across her roses at the chaos unfolding on our lawn. As sirens screamed closer, the 2 compliance officers continued their award-worthy performances of pain and regret. I stood holding Derek's phone, staring at that incriminating text, and felt a cold smile spread across my face. Claire limped toward me, touching her bruised cheek, eyes blazing with pride. "That's my husband," she whispered. Despite the chaos, I felt the surge of love and protective fury that had fueled 15 years of marriage, deployments, and civilian battles. But the bigger question gnawed at me: if Marissa Grant had ordered this assault by text, what else was she planning? The next morning, the investigation began. At 06:00, I sat at the kitchen table with coffee, laptop, and a notepad full of license plate numbers. Claire's bruised cheek was all the motivation I needed. Sunlight cut through the blinds in sharp bars of light, like prison shadows across the table. Appropriate, considering we were now hunting criminals. At 7 a.m., the doorbell rang. Tom Herrera stood there, retired cop, neighbor, and one of the few men I trusted. Hawaiian shirt, cargo shorts, a handshake that spoke of decades of grit. "Jesus, Chuck," he muttered, eyeing Claire's cheek. "These idiots left more evidence than a bank robbery gone wrong." Tom knew the HOA world better than most lawyers. "Community Compliance Group," he explained, "is a front. They've got a stack of complaints a mile high. Basically hired muscle in cheap uniforms." Together, we played detective, tracking license plates back to their so-called company. Their website looked like it hadn't been updated since dial-up internet, plastered with stock photos of fake tough guys. The Yelp reviews were comedy gold. "Showed up drunk to a noise complaint. Stole my sandwich during investigation. And my personal favorite, asked to use the bathroom, clogged the toilet." These were the professionals Marissa had unleashed on us. I'd seen better discipline from mall food court security. Meanwhile, Claire worked her magic with Mildred, the lonely neighbor across the street who'd long been Marissa's unofficial spy. With tea and cookies, she got Mildred talking. "She keeps a notebook," Mildred whispered, eyes darting nervously toward Marissa's house. "A composition book. Tracks everyone's debts and violations. Calls it her control system. Brags about it all the time. Says Frank Mitchell owes her $2,500 in fines. Already filed notice of lien on his house. He's terrified." Right on cue, Frank showed up at our door. Boots dusty, shirt oil-stained, Handshake firm, but his palms were sweaty and his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "Chuck, man. I'm sorry about yesterday," he muttered. "You did the right thing defending Claire." But there was something in his voice, something off. When Tom casually mentioned lean procedures, Frank swallowed hard, his eyes flicking toward Marissa's house. "I'm sure. It won't go that far," he stammered. That pause told me everything I needed to know. Tom's investigator instincts proved invaluable as we dug into the paper trail. "She's systematic, Chuck," he said. "She funnels HOA dues into enforcement contracts, intimidation services, so-called compliance consulting. She's built her own miniature police state right here in suburbia." His spreadsheets and bank records backed it up, payments to sketchy companies rubber-stamped by Marissa's board of directors, who were either too scared or too lazy to ask questions. The real breakthrough came when Tom mentioned something that made my instincts prickle. "Funny thing yesterday. Got a friend request in our veterans group. Some guy named Greg. Says he knows about Marissa's methods, wants to connect with military families. Could be nothing." His voice trailed off. But we both knew, in our line of work, coincidence doesn't exist. I fired up my laptop and started digging. Marriage certificates. Divorce filings. Property records. And there it was, Marissa Grant married Gregory Lane in 1998. Divorced in 2021. Current address, 1247 Pelican Bay Drive. One subdivision over. Walking distance. Close enough to track her movements. Close enough to know her routines. Close enough to get involved. Mildred, during her second tea session with Claire, added more intel. "I've overheard Marissa on calls with a man named Greg. Always shouting. Always about money or those military types who think they're so tough. She gets especially venomous when she says his name, like he's the one person she can't control." The puzzle pieces began falling into place. Marissa wasn't just a power-drunk HOA tyrant. She had baggage. And an ex-husband who might know where the skeletons were buried. That afternoon, Tom's phone rang from a blocked number. "Tom Herrera? This is Greg Lane. We need to discuss our mutual Marissa problem." His voice was gravelly, scarred, like a man who had lived through combat and carried it in his lungs. "I've been tracking her for months. Documenting everything. What happened to your neighbor's wife yesterday was the last straw. Someone has to stop her." That night, I stood at the kitchen window, watching the glow of Frank's lights burning past midnight. Claire massaged my shoulders, her intuition reading me like a book. "What's on your mind?" she asked softly. "I'm thinking about Greg Lane. He knows Marissa's methods, lives close enough to monitor her every move, and he's been whispering in veteran groups for weeks. The question is, does he want revenge on her? Or is he planning to finish what she started against us?" The next morning, Marissa launched her psychological warfare campaign. And honestly, I had to respect the strategy, even while I hated the execution. Mildred became her unwitting messenger at the mailbox cluster, playing town crier to the morning gossip crowd. I watched through the kitchen window, coffee in hand, as she reluctantly spread Marissa's poison. "Marissa's concerned about Chuck," she said carefully. "She thinks combat vets sometimes struggle to adjust to civilian life. That they could be dangerous." Mrs. Rodriguez crossed her arms instantly. "That's nonsense. I saw it. Chuck warned those fake cops 3 times before defending his wife." But I noticed Mrs. Kim inch backward, her doubt showing in her posture. That was the brilliance of Marissa's tactic. She didn't outright call me unstable, she just planted the seed of PTSD whispers and let imaginations do the rest. It was the same psychological warfare I'd seen overseas, except instead of roadside bombs, she used gossip and paranoia. At least insurgents had the decency to shoot at you head-on. Later that day, Mildred arrived at our door. Her hands trembled as she carried a manila envelope, her eyes red from sleepless guilt. "I can't let Marissa keep destroying families," she said, voice stronger than I'd ever heard. "I've been helping her. Spying. But I'm done." Inside that envelope was gold, smartphone photos of Marissa's entire control system. Every page of her infamous notebook, photographed with timestamp metadata. Without realizing it, Mildred had built a case file strong enough to drop a hammer on Marissa's empire. We spread the pages across the kitchen table like generals planning a raid. The scale of her surveillance was breathtaking. Each page listed dates, fines, violation codes, and what she called pressure points. $500, Mrs. Chen's purple mailbox. $300, Rodriguez family's flag, 2 inches too high. $75, Tom's dog barking at 9:01 p.m. 60 seconds past quiet hours. But one entry froze my blood. Frank Mitchell, $2,500 deck violations plus late fees. Leverage opportunity. Lien filed. Subject shows high compliance potential under financial pressure. This wasn't HOA management. This was intelligence gathering. Blackmail disguised as suburban order. Claire leaned over my shoulder, her voice steady. "Chuck. This reads like a military target assessment. She's profiling weaknesses, financial, personal, family. This isn't about fences. It's about control." That evening, the community center was packed. The air buzzed like a briefing room before a mission. Frank stood up, delivering his speech with trembling determination. "Chuck Morgan showed restraint yesterday. He's a soldier, and a good man. I fully support him." The applause was real. But as everyone clapped, I watched Frank closely. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. His jaw twitched when he said my name. And his eyes kept darting toward Marissa's empty chair, as if expecting her to appear out of thin air. This man was terrified. Not just of losing his house, of something worse. Claire, ever tactical, filmed the entire meeting. Because with Marissa's games, if you didn't document it, you lost it. Claire captured everything on her phone: Frank's testimony, the community's support, and, most importantly, the faces of neighbors who were finally starting to see through Marissa's manipulation campaign. Then Tom stood and added the weight of his law enforcement background. "As a former police officer, I can tell you Jack handled this textbook perfect: clear warnings, appropriate force, immediate medical assistance for the aggressors." After the meeting, Frank approached me. His handshake was firm, his words steady, but the fear in his eyes told the truth. "Jack, if you need me to testify or make a statement, I'm your guy. Whatever it takes to stop Marissa's nonsense." I'd seen that look before, in soldiers about to head into missions they might not come back from. Fear mixed with resignation. Later, Tom pulled me aside with intel that changed everything. "Jack, you need to see the last page Mildred photographed. The handwriting's different, aggressive, masculine. It says, Phase 2. If legal fails, escalate pressure. GL backup plan ready." Those initials could only mean Greg Lane, Marissa's supposedly out-of-the-picture ex-husband. Suddenly, her confidence made perfect sense. But what really kept me awake wasn't the legal games, it was Frank's expression. That hollow look of a man trapped between impossible choices. I'd seen it in combat, right before men made decisions that haunted them forever. That evening, Claire and I were doing dishes when she voiced the same fear gnawing at my gut. "Jack. What if Frank can't really help us? What if he's too terrified to tell the truth when it matters?" Her instincts were razor sharp. Years of teaching had taught her to read lies in children's eyes, and she had spotted the same cracks I had. That night, I stared out the window at Frank's house, the lights burning late. On camera, he had praised my restraint and promised to testify. But Marissa had $2,500 worth of leverage hanging over him like a guillotine. And desperate men make desperate choices. The next morning, we walked into Polk County Courthouse for the preliminary hearing on Marissa's restraining order. Bureaucracy hung in the air, marble floors echoing footsteps, fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps, the smell of old paper and fear. I wore my navy suit, Claire her red dress. Our lawyer had everything organized with military precision, but I saw the concern in her eyes. Then Frank walked in, and my stomach dropped. He didn't sit with us. He went straight to Marissa's side. The shift was immediate. Neighbors who had shown up to support us began whispering, confused and shaken. Tom just shook his head, his ex-cop instincts confirming what I didn't want to admit: betrayal. When Frank swore in, his hands shook so badly the bailiff had to steady the Bible. He couldn't meet my eyes. "Your Honor," he said, his voice cracking, "Jack Morgan threatened me and my family. He told me if I didn't publicly support him, he'd give me the same treatment he gave those security officers." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Frank continued, layering his performance with just enough fear to sell it. He spoke of his kids, their school, his mortgage. Then the dagger. When Mrs. Grant offered to resolve my debt in exchange for honest testimony about Mr. Morgan's threats, I knew I had to tell the truth. It was theater, perfect, damning theater. The judge's eyes narrowed, weighing every word. But Claire had been recording. Tom rose with calm authority. "Your Honor, I'd like to play a recording from our community meeting 3 days ago. Timestamp 0327. Carl's voice filled the room, crystal clear. Jack Morgan showed remarkable restraint. I've known soldiers, and Jack is a good man. I fully support him. Frank's face collapsed. His own words had betrayed him. Sweat poured down his forehead as he shrank into the witness chair. Then Tom presented Mildred's photos, blown up for everyone to see, Marissa's handwriting, the notes about Frank's fines, the damning phrase, leverage opportunity. Compliance expected. Judge Martinez leaned forward, glasses sliding down her nose. Mr. Mitchell, this recording directly contradicts your testimony. Are you saying you lied at the community meeting, or are you lying now? The question landed like a grenade. Frank broke. I'm sorry, he whispered, tears spilling. Mrs. Grant offered to forgive my debt if I testified against Jack. I couldn't lose my house. My kids' school, their friends. The judge's disgust was palpable. This court takes perjury very seriously, Mr. Mitchell. But given the coercion, I'm inclined toward leniency, if you fully cooperate with this investigation. She turned her gaze to Marissa, who was whispering furiously to her expensive lawyer. Mrs. Grant, this evidence suggests a pattern of intimidation and witness tampering that goes well beyond HOA regulations. Frank collapsed, sobbing. Jack. Claire. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I couldn't lose everything. He didn't need to finish. Everyone in that courtroom understood the impossible choice Marissa had forced him into. Betray your friends or watch your family lose their home. I leaned forward, and despite the lies, the betrayal, the attempt to paint me as a dangerous psychopath, I feel sorry for this broken man. Frank, I say quietly, I understand fear. But lies don't protect your family, they just create more problems for everyone. It isn't forgiveness, not yet. But it's recognition that Marissa is the true villain here, not the desperate father she manipulated into perjury. Judge Martinez orders a full investigation into witness tampering and keeps the restraining order in place, which means Marissa can't harass us, but the legal battle is far from over. As we file out of the courthouse, I spot Frank exiting through a side door, his shoulders slumped with the weight of his choices. But something else grabs my attention. Marissa steps up to him in the parking lot, places her hand on his shoulder, and whispers something in his ear. Whatever she says drains the color from Frank's face. His shoulders sag even more, as if he's carrying a burden heavier than debt. She's not comforting him or celebrating. She's tightening the leash. Tom notices it too, nudging me. That woman's not done with Frank, he mutters. She's got something else over him, and it's worse than money. Frank had just destroyed his credibility in open court, admitted to perjury, and burned bridges with half the neighborhood. So what did Marissa whisper that made him look more terrified than before he testified? The next morning, Mildred shows up at our door with a manila envelope and the expression of someone who's just crossed a point of no return. Her eyes are swollen from crying, but her posture is straighter, more determined than I've ever seen. Jack, Claire, she says, voice trembling but strong. I'm done being Marissa's spy. Here's everything I've been documenting. Inside the envelope, photographs of Marissa's entire control system. Her infamous black book, complete with metadata, dates, receipts, and even bank deposit slips linking HOA funds to shady accounts. We spread the evidence across our kitchen table like military planners preparing for an operation. The scale of corruption is staggering. Marissa's been weaponizing HOA dues, funding private enforcers, legal intimidation firms, and what she smugly calls compliance consulting. Tom whistles low as he scans the documents. Jack, she's built herself a little police state right here in suburbia. Dirt on everyone. Leverage on half the neighborhood. And the bankroll to ruin lives. That's when my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. The words make my blood run cold. Your wife works at that school, right? Public places can be so unpredictable. A friend. I show the screen to Claire. Her face goes pale, then flushes red with fury. Jack, my students, my colleagues. She's already grabbing her phone, calling the principal, alerting school security. Her protective instincts override everything else. But I know this kind of threat. I've seen insurgents target civilians overseas. This isn't HOA harassment anymore, it's terrorism. Psychological warfare meant to make us feel helpless. Claire screenshots and records everything, documenting like always. "We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore," she says grimly. Now she's threatening children. Tom takes one look and his cop instincts flare. This isn't random. This is tactical. Whoever sent this knows Claire's schedule, her routines. They've been watching her. He immediately starts working his contacts. Threats against schools pull in federal attention, and Marissa may have just escalated herself into a criminal investigation. That afternoon, my phone rings again. Unknown number. A rough, weathered voice. "Jack Morgan, this is Greg Lane. Time we talked about our mutual Marissa problem. I've been watching her escalate for weeks. After what happened in court with Frank, I can't stay silent anymore." The voice carries authority, the kind of authority forged under fire. We meet at a Denny's, neutral ground away from Marissa's spies. Greg steps out of a gray pickup, every inch the veteran, weathered face, faded Marine Corps tattoo, and a limp that tells its own story. His handshake is firm but brief, the greeting of a man who doesn't trust easily. "You were smart to meet here," he says, sliding a manila folder across the sticky table. "Marissa told people I died in a training accident. Easier than admitting she drove away another military man." Inside the folder, 15 years of evidence. Bank statements, phone records, email printouts. Proof of Marissa's systematic campaigns to control everyone around her. Greg explains, pointing to highlighted entries. Joint accounts she never closed after the divorce. "Look, $1,500 to Community Compliance Group, $800 to a PI service, $2,000 to Legal Intimidation Consulting. All with money I was legally forced to contribute." Then he produces the smoking gun, his old phone, loaded with recordings of Marissa's drunken late-night calls. He plays one. Marissa's slurred voice fills the booth. "Greg, you bastard. I'll destroy anyone who reminds me of you. Military types think they're so tough. I hired those compliance idiots to teach that SEAL's wife a lesson. She deserved it for filming my enforcement action." It's a confession, conspiracy and assault, right there on tape. Greg's expression is grim. "She calls me every month when she's drunk. Threats, power plays. I started recording 2 years ago when I realized she was using our shared funds to fund her harassment campaigns. What happened to Claire was the last straw." He shows more, email chains, bank transfers, and, most damning, text messages. One recent message makes my stomach drop. "G, time for phase 3. You know what to do." "J, understood." Greg leans in. His voice barely above a whisper. "Jack, phase 3 wasn't my idea. It was hers. The school threat? That's part of it. She's been planning this escalation for months. And based on this text she sent me this morning, she's already started." The pieces lock into place like a briefing. Marissa isn't just a power-drunk HOA president. She's a manipulator with deep control issues, unlimited funds, and an escalating playbook. Frank's betrayal wasn't just about money, it was about proving she could break anyone. Greg slides over his final piece of evidence, photographs. Frank Mitchell, meeting with Marissa's private investigator. Frank, signing documents in Marissa's kitchen. Proof of coercion, and maybe proof of something darker. Frank receiving what looked like cash payments in exchange for compromising information about his neighbors. She didn't just threaten foreclosure, Greg explains. She turned Frank into her spy. She had him documenting people's routines, vulnerabilities, family schedules. He was her intelligence asset. That's why Frank looked so broken after testifying. I realize it out loud. Marissa didn't just have leverage over his house. She had dirt proving he'd betrayed everyone's trust. He wasn't just afraid of losing his home. He was terrified of the neighborhood discovering how deep his betrayal went. As we leave Denny's, Greg slips me his contact info and a USB drive. "Jack, Marissa's not done. She's got money, connections, and now? She's got nothing left to lose. Phase 3 might be worse than anything you've seen so far." He pauses at his truck, shoulders heavy with regret. "I should have stopped her years ago. But I was tired of fighting. Watching her hurt your family. It reminded me you can't walk away from bullies. Not forever." That night, Claire and I sit at the kitchen table reviewing everything: assault videos, bank statements, confessions, financial transfers, and that chilling school threat. We've got more than enough to bury Marissa in court. But the real question burns in my mind: what is phase 3? If Greg, her ex-husband of 15 years, fears it, then it's something darker than HOA fines or private goons. She's crossed into something that feels like domestic terrorism. The next day, the community center is jammed wall to wall. Standing room only, neighbors pressed against the walls, everyone buzzing with anger. Word spread fast: Frank's courtroom collapse, Marissa's black book, and most of all, the school threat. This doesn't feel like a boring HOA meeting. This feels like a rebellion. Claire and I arrive early, old training telling me to secure ground before the battle. But the tension in the air? You could slice it with a knife. These aren't homeowners annoyed about mailbox paint. These are furious neighbors, ready to end a dictatorship. I take the podium and present the evidence like a threat briefing. First, Claire's assault video plays across the projector. Silence grips the room as everyone watches Marissa's hired enforcers shove and strike a teacher on her own lawn, while I shout warnings before defending my family. Gasps. Angry mutters. Someone curses under their breath. Then, Mildred's black book, blown up on poster boards for everyone to see. Names. Financial struggles. Divorce proceedings. Private details turned into weapons. The gasps grow louder as neighbors recognize their own lives played out in Marissa's handwriting. Mrs. Rodriguez bolts up. That manipulative witch fined me $300 for a flag height violation while tracking my divorce? Tom takes the microphone next, methodical, calm, like a detective building a case. Ladies and gentlemen, Marissa Grant diverted over $15,000 of your HOA dues, your money, into private security, intimidation firms, and surveillance operations against her own neighbors. The projector shows bank transfers, contracts, receipts. The anger thickens. But then, the bombshell. Greg's recording. Marissa's drunken voice fells the sound system. I hired those compliance idiots to teach that SEAL's wife a lesson. Everyone breaks when you apply enough pressure. The room freezes. Her voice spills into confession after confession, about Frank, about Phase 2, about crushing anyone who reminded her of the military independence she couldn't control. The silence cracks into outrage. Shouts erupt. She extorted me for my mailbox color, Mrs. Chen. She turned our neighborhood into a dictatorship, Mr. Martinez, normally the quietest man in the room, his voice shaking with rage. It's no longer a meeting. It's a mutiny. Mrs. Whitaker, our vice president, bangs her gavel. Per community bylaws, with over 20% support, this assembly can call an immediate vote of no confidence. The motion is raised, seconded, and hands shoot up everywhere. Final count, 52 votes for removal, 1 abstention, 1 against. The lone no is Marissa's pathetic attempt to save herself. But Marissa doesn't go quietly. She lunges for the microphone, mask slipping, voice shrill with desperation. You fools. You have no idea what you're doing. I built this community. Without me, values crash, crime skyrockets. You need me. Security volunteers move in, but she twists free, spinning on the crowd with venom in her eyes. You think you've won? Jack Morgan, you have no idea what's coming. Phase 3 doesn't need HOA authority. I've got resources, connections far beyond this neighborhood. The words hang in the air like a bomb. The crowd erupts into chaos. Shouts, demands, frantic questions. What is Phase 3? Tom starts organizing immediate security for families with kids. Others coordinate emergency phone trees, eyes darting to the exits. Mrs. Whitaker pounds the gavel. Interim leadership must be appointed now. The vote is unanimous. Jack Morgan as interim president. Mildred as community liaison. Tom Herrera as security coordinator. Applause roars, but the celebration is short-lived. Because then, my phone buzzes. Another text. Your wife teaches at Sunset Elementary, right? Kids are so vulnerable at 3:15 dismissal. A friend. I show Claire and Tom. Their faces mirror my own realization. Phase 3 isn't coming. It's already here. Martha approaches us with tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. She confesses. I helped her gather information about everyone's daily routines and schedules. I never thought she'd target innocent children. Derek's police instincts kick into overdrive as he starts organizing neighborhood security protocols with military precision. This isn't random harassment anymore, people, he explains to the increasingly worried crowd. Threatening schools brings federal law enforcement attention. And Monica may have just crossed the line from civil harassment into domestic terrorism territory. We need to document everything, coordinate with authorities, and protect our families while the system investigates. That's when Harold appears at the community center as we're locking up, his weathered face grim with news none of us wants to hear. "Sam, I need to show you something," he says, pulling out his phone with hands that shake slightly. "Monica sent me another message an hour ago, and it's worse than anything we've discussed so far." The text message is short, but absolutely terrifying. Phase 3 activated. School security is weaker than they think. Remember our discussion about maximum impact scenarios? This ends tomorrow. Comment below what you think Monica's Phase 3 could be. Because based on her access to private investigators, her detailed knowledge of neighborhood routines, and her obvious willingness to target schools full of innocent children, some of your guesses might be frighteningly accurate. Monica may be stripped of her HOA power, but someone just threatened Emma's school with specific knowledge of dismissal times and security gaps, and she's activated Phase 3, which apparently doesn't need HOA authority to operate. Who is Monica's final weapon? And how do we protect an entire elementary school from someone who's clearly lost all moral boundaries? The courthouse is packed like a small-town murder trial, with local news cameras in the back row and neighbors filling every available seat. Word has spread beyond our subdivision about the HOA president who hired fake cops, manipulated testimony, and threatened elementary schools. I'm wearing the same navy suit, but today it feels like armor rather than formality. Emma's red dress has become her power outfit, a symbol of strength rather than victimhood. Derek takes the lead in presenting our evidence, and his police background shows in every word. Your Honor, we have 3 smoking guns that prove a pattern of escalating harassment and intimidation. 1. Emma's assault video plays on the courtroom monitors, showing the slap, my warnings, and those fake compliance patches. 2. Martha's Black Book documentation with metadata proving Monica's systematic targeting of neighbors based on vulnerabilities. 3. And most damning, Harold's recording of Monica's drunk confession, where she admits to ordering the assault. Harold takes the witness stand with the bearing of someone who's testified in military tribunals and survived far worse than suburban courtroom drama. Your Honor, I was married to Monica Walker for 15 years. This pattern of intimidation, financial manipulation, and harassment isn't new. It's who she becomes when challenged. She's dangerous because she combines intelligence with a complete lack of moral boundaries. The drunk recording plays through the courtroom speakers, and Monica's slurred voice confesses to everything. I hired those compliance idiots to teach that veteran's wife a lesson. Military types think they're so tough, but everyone breaks when you apply enough pressure. Her confession continues with details about Carl's manipulation, financial leverage, and her Phase 3 plans that don't require HOA authority. Jurors lean forward, scribbling notes. They understand they're hearing evidence of a genuine criminal conspiracy. Monica's expensive lawyer tries damage control, but there's no defending a recorded confession paired with financial evidence and first-hand witnesses. Against legal advice, Monica takes the stand. Her mask disintegrates completely. Your Honor, I was protecting community property values. Sam Carter represents everything wrong with military entitlement. He thinks his service gives him the right to ignore community standards. Her voice rises with each word, revealing the hatred driving her entire campaign. Derek's cross-examination obliterates her credibility. Mrs. Walker, afraid people don't hire assault teams, he says, holding up bank transfer records. They don't threaten elementary schools, he continues, displaying the threat message. And they don't record drunk confessions admitting to conspiracy and witness tampering. Monica has no coherent responses, just desperate justifications. The breakthrough comes when the bailiff delivers an urgent note to the judge mid-hearing. Judge Alvarez reads it, her expression shifting from calm to shocked. Mrs. Walker, this court has just been informed that the anonymous threat message to Maplewood Elementary School was traced to your personal cell phone through digital forensics. This changes the severity of charges significantly. Monica's breakdown is both spectacular and terrifying. That wasn't me. I didn't send any school threats. Someone's framing me. She screams, fighting against the bailiff's hands. Harold, you did this to me. You're framing me. But Harold only shakes his head sadly. Everyone in the courtroom can see Monica's accusations make no sense against the evidence timeline. Judge Alvarez delivers the verdict with the gravity of someone who's seen true evil hiding in suburban authority. Mrs. Walker, this court finds you guilty of harassment, intimidation, assault by proxy, witness tampering, and making terroristic threats against educational institutions. Sentence: 18 months probation with electronic monitoring, $8,000 restitution, 200 hours of community service, mandatory mental health evaluation, and a lifetime ban from HOA involvement. Outside the courthouse, Derek pulls me aside with a revelation. "Sam, I need to tell you something about that school threat message," he says, uneasy. "After Monica's Phase 3 text to Harold. I used her confiscated phone to send that message to your number. Sometimes justice needs a little push. I wanted to ensure she faced consequences for threatening children, even if she hadn't acted yet." I stare at him, then slowly smile. "Derek, remind me never to get on your bad side." We both laugh. That evening, the neighborhood celebrates. I'm grilling burgers while Emma organizes games for the kids. Martha is laughing with real friends for the first time in years. Even Carl shows up to apologize, asking about running for board secretary. "I want to make this right, Sam. Help you build something better than what Monica destroyed." His handshake is genuine now. Monica's house sits dark with a sold sign in the yard. She's moved to an apartment across town, ankle monitor glowing, barred from coming within 500 yards of our neighborhood. Emma and I sit on our porch, watching the sunset while children play in yards that finally feel safe. Sprinklers sparkle rainbows across lawns, and the American flag waves freely, not out of fear or regulation, but pride. "Think we'll ever have normal suburban drama again?" Emma asks, leaning against my shoulder. I laugh. "Baby, with neighbors like ours, there's never going to be a dull moment. But at least now, our drama will be honest drama, not psychological warfare disguised as community management." Justice served. Community healed. And Monica Walker finally facing consequences. But next week, new neighbors move into her old house. And judging by the moving truck packed with security cameras and private property signs, they might have secrets of their own. That's another story for another day.